This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 363 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we're going to be jumping into what is web hosting and how does it work. I am extremely fortunate because I had a fabulous sponsor at our last IEA Virtual Summit in BigScoots. And you're going to hear Katie talk a little bit about demystifying web hosting. As someone who has been online for 13 years, I asked her some questions that I felt silly asking her, but the answers that she gave blew my mind. If you've always wondered about web hosting, what's the difference between shared and VPS and all these scary words they use, you're going to want to listen to this episode. Plus, she is offering an amazing promo. You're going to get 99% off for your first 2 months of WordPress hosting. So make sure that you jump in and listen to this episode and take advantage of that offer. All right, you guys, let's jump in. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hello, Jenny. I'm great. How about yourself?
Very good. Thank you. I am really excited to talk about what is web hosting and how exactly does it work. Before we really jump into that, I want you to actually introduce yourself and your company, and then we can really kind of break this down, even for someone that has been blogging as long as I have, 13 some odd years, that has a lot of questions about hosting and the specifics, because I feel like a lot of times we're like, here, we're going to hire you, but we have no idea what we're using for hosting or how it all works. So let's start off with you introducing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Super excited to be here today as well. My name is Katie, of course, and I have been on the BigScoots team for almost 5 years, which is crazy to even think about that it's been that long. But we are a premium managed WordPress hosting provider. So a bit of a mouthful, but we are a web hosting provider, to keep that a little bit shorter, and really work alongside our clients and collaborate with you to really dive into helping you grow your site and helping your website become successful as well.
Excellent. I love the way that you described it, because that is the way I think of you. So let's start off really basic, which I feel like is a kind of a basic question, but I think that there's a lot of questions often about this. What exactly is web hosting?
Great question. And one that is very important. I think it is a very common question. Even still to this day, we get folks that are moving over to us that are still unsure about, what types of questions to ask or what they really should be concerned with when choosing a web host. But without getting into the nitty gritty too much, web hosting is essentially so we provide you with the space for your website to live on the internet. So there's an interesting analogy that I think works well to explain really what it is that we do and what other web hosts do. So if you think about a shopping mall, for example, somebody owns that shopping mall, right? And then inside that shopping mall, you have several other smaller businesses that are inside of that larger shopping mall entity. So you've got little franchise owners in there, some private businesses in there. And as a website owner, you would be like the smaller individual that has that rented space inside the shopping mall, right? So you don't actually own the larger mall, but whoever does own the mall takes care of your security. They take care of your heating and cooling. They take care of keeping the space clean for you. They might also take care of helping push some individuals into that space for you to get in front of your business. So us at BigScoots as your web hosting provider are like that larger shopping mall, and our clients who own their websites are like the smaller shops inside of that mall.
Okay, I don't know if you saw my face when you started explaining that, but that is honestly the best way I have ever heard someone explain this, because we can put that kind of metaphor that you created there and be able to see how we interact with that. So you started to talk about, like, in a mall, how it would be security and cleaning. How does web hosting work? What is it that you all are taking care of as a web host?
So there's a lot that we handle, something that I could go on for really hours and hours talking about. But I think some of the most important things are the fact that we give you that space for your website to live, but we also give you that space for your website to grow. So what that means is, if you have goals for your website of really getting a lot of traffic on your site, if eventually you want to start monetizing your site through, maybe working with an ad agency, for example, if you really want to grow and scale your website, you need a host that allows you to do that. So what we do is handle all of your security behind the scenes. We handle proactively monitoring your site. So if there is any attacks or impacts or issues that might hit your site, we get notified of them immediately before it even impacts your site or your site's visitors notice it. So we take care of that proactive monitoring. We also perform ongoing optimizations for your site. So what that means is we really make sure that your site is performing the best that it possibly can and that your site speed is the best that it possibly can be, not only based on where your site is now and the size of your site now and the traffic you have now, but on an ongoing basis as your website grows. So you quite literally cannot outgrow our services at BigScoots. I think another thing that's important to note is that shopping mall that I referenced, we actually have our own. So a lot of other hosting providers actually rent out that space from other third parties, and we actually own 100% of our own infrastructure right downtown Chicago, actually. So you can't outgrow our services. We can always create a custom solution for you, no matter the size of your website or what the requirements are of your site.
All right, excellent. So who needs web hosting?
Every single person who wants to have a website needs web hosting. If you want to have a website that's live on the internet for anybody to be able to access, you need a host.
Okay, so let's talk about, what if I have Squarespace and what if I have WordPress, right? Do I need web hosting for Squarespace?
So yes, but it's not a separate hosting provider that you require. So if you have a website set up with a company like Squarespace, they are a site building platform, but they also host your website for you. So if you have a Squarespace site, you actually are required to host it with Squarespace. The same goes with those other site builders like Wix or Blogger, for example. They are your host internally as well. With WordPress, there's two entities there. There's WordPress.com and WordPress.org. WordPress.com is very similar to Squarespace in the sense that if you have a WordPress.com website, you're required to actually host with WordPress.com. So they are your internal host there. Some limitations there, but if you are with WordPress.org, which is the completely free site building software that allows you to customize your website from the inside out, make it look any way that you want, make it function any way that you want, which is really that bread and butter. That's where you want to be, is with WordPress.org. If you really want to have a website that can scale, that's when you require a hosting provider like ourselves, or any of the other hosting providers that are on the web.
Yes, and I think that that's the confusing part in the beginning, especially if you're starting to build your website. Many of us that have gone through this, especially if we're trying to use SEO and keyword research and knowing that we want to create this as a business, we're not just using it as like a storefront, kind of like Shopify. We're using it to increase our traffic. We go to WordPress.org. And I think a lot of people that start on Blogger or Squarespace and then see the growth that they're trying to make and need the options, they go to WordPress.org. And then, of course, need hosting. So
yeah,
perfect.
And we can also help with that too. So if somebody is set up on a Squarespace site currently, and maybe you got started there in the beginning because it just made the most sense for you when you were just getting things started, which is really common. A lot of folks do start with Squarespace or Wix or Blogger or any of the other site builders. But as things start to grow, if you're looking for a little bit more support or more management, or you're really looking to be able to speed up your site because now you have this additional traffic, you want to be able to support it. So now maybe you're considering a switch over to WordPress. We can actually help you with that transition as well.
Okay, you said something really important. I feel like I want to point out right there, the site speed. Can we talk a little bit about that? Why is that so important? And how is the difference going to WordPress.org to then have web hosting going to make a difference?
So it really comes down to, with us, the site-specific management that we provide, because when you move over to WordPress.org and you move over to a hosting provider like ourselves, you now have a technical partner that handles everything for you behind the scenes to make sure that your site is running the best that it possibly can. So not only does that mean it's performing its best for you when you're on the back end of your site, actually creating posts and creating content, because you want that to run well for yourself as well, so that you don't get frustrated when you're actually trying to do work on the site. But it also means that the user or the visitor on your website has a great end user experience, which in turn is going to help Google favor your website more, because those visitors are going to spend more time on your website. They're going to interact with it more. They're going to interact with different things on each page more frequently, stay there longer, which is in turn going to help with search engine optimization as well, which Google favors. So everything, it's kind of a snowball effect, you could say. So the site speed and performance are two of the most critical pieces when you are really trying to grow your site, because that end user experience, making that positive, is really what you want for your website.
Excellent. What are the different types of web hosting services that are often offered? Because we hear it talking about, oh, you're going to share a server, and oh, you're going to have your own server. What in the world are they talking about?
So there are a handful of different types of services, many of which we offer, but the two primary ones, I would say, or not necessarily primary, but the two most commonly asked about ones would be shared hosting versus something that we call managed WordPress, or a virtual private server, or VPS, that some folks might have heard it called. So shared hosting is really just as the name sounds. It is quite literally shared. So it means that you do not have a private space. It means that your website lives within a server that is shared with many, many other websites. So what that means is you're also sharing the resources. So it makes it a very good cost-effective solution, because we can house more websites inside the same server. So it allows us to keep our costs lower, which makes the cost a little bit lower for you as well. But unfortunately, when you are sharing a space like that, you can be impacted by the other sites that are sharing that space there. So you're not guaranteed the same levels of performance or site speed for your website, but it's a good lower cost option if you're trying to keep things a little bit more economical at the beginning. From there, you would move into our managed WordPress plans, or a virtual private server, or VPS. So what that means is, rather than sharing the space, you have your own private entity that your website lives in. So you're the sole tenant within that space. With us, our managed WordPress plans, our starter tier and professional tier specifically, are also a virtual private server, but they are optimized specifically for WordPress. So we actually customize them for the needs of your individual site, and your site lives within that space by itself.
Okay. When it comes to deciding, is there a certain amount of page views that someone came to you and they're saying, I'm hitting 50,000 page views? Is there a recommendation you would make based on page views to push them either to shared or the managed?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Any website, no matter if they are brand spanking new, they have zero traffic, even if the website doesn't even exist yet and they want to create a WordPress website, moving into a managed WordPress plan or a VPS environment is recommended across the board, no matter what, because the benefits that you're going to have there are so substantial compared to a shared hosting environment. So I would say it really comes down to the goals that you have for your site, whether you have zero traffic or you have 50,000 monthly visitors and above. If you really have those goals of growing your site, getting your site set up into a position for that growth and the success of that site is so important and paramount to, and doing that within a virtual space, a virtual private space, is going to enable you to do that. Shared hosting, it's not really designed based off of a specific amount of traffic, because it more comes down to the resources that your website requires, because you're given a set amount of resources to use within a private space, within a shared space, because you're sharing it with so many other sites. So it's not designated to a specific amount of traffic. So that's why I said yes and no. But a virtual space, a virtual private space, or a managed WordPress plan is recommended no matter the size of your site, whether it's brand new or you've got multi-thousands of monthly visits.
Okay, so you said resources when you were talking about shared sites, the amount of resources that your website needs or uses. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about? Is it number of like pages that you have on your site, number of posts that you have, how you are able to navigate through a website? What is that specifically?
So the resources I'm referring to are things like your CPU cores or the memory, which is more based on the actual setup of the infrastructure that you're given and the amount of resources that is in that infrastructure. So each server that gets created has a specific amount of resources for your website to use. Okay. So within a shared environment, you are given a set amount of resources to utilize for your website, and different things consume resources. There's also a dedicated amount of storage space as well. So that's when, things like the number of posts that you have, the number of images you have on your site, the number of videos, the size of your theme files, all sorts of things consume your storage space.
Okay. That's a great explanation, because I think that that's one of the things that confuse people is why is it shared? Why would it be an issue? And I think we understand, or at least I know one of the things I quickly understood is that for me, it was page views. At one point, I felt like my site started getting throttled on a different web hosting. And it was because I was in a shared environment, and I thought it was because of my page views. But what you're saying is it could very well be someone else's page views, or the size of my site, the number of posts, the number of videos and images.
Yes, exactly. And page views, or the amount of traffic that you have on your site, does not directly correlate all the time to the amount of resources that get used, because some websites are a little bit more dynamic in nature, meaning that they consume more resources than a standard static WordPress website. So for example, if you had an e-commerce shop set up on your site, or a membership area, or an events calendar that folks interact with, that becomes much more resource intensive. So it's going to consume more resources. So you really need to get your site set up with those additional resources to support that. So that's not always traffic. That's just your site requiring more resources.
Okay, Katie, I have to tell you, the way that you have explained things have probably been the best I've ever heard someone explain web hosting. And I'm not just saying that to say that to you. So I have one more question I have to ask you. What is the difference between web hosting and a domain name? Because I have a feeling you have a really good way of explaining this.
A great question, and one that we get asked all the time. And I think the very first thing that's really important to say is that they are two completely separate services. I think a lot of folks think that they might be intertwined with each other and that they go hand in hand, but they are completely separate. So you require both. So your domain name is also known as your domain registration. So that's really what gives you the ownership of the name of your website. So what someone will actually type into the search bar in a browser to find your website. That's your domain name. That's normally an annual fee that you pay, and you can have that set up anywhere. Any company that offers domain registrations, you can have your domain. And then the hosting service is the separate piece, which goes back to that mall analogy that I made, where you actually require the service to have your website live on the internet. So you require both of them, and they don't have to be with the same provider. So you can have them set up in separate places if you'd like to. I would say that's really more of a personal preference thing. Some folks like to have them organized all with one provider just to keep things nice and seamless. You can see everything all in one dashboard when you sign in, or some folks like to keep them separate. It's really personal preference.
Okay, excellent. See, I knew you would know exactly how to. So tell me about the promo that BigScoots is offering to all of our listeners. I'm going to obviously link to it in the show notes. So for those that are listening, you can hop over, to go into your app and just go over to the website for it. But tell me a little bit more about what you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. Something we're really excited to be able to offer. It is 99% off the first 2 months, specifically within our managed WordPress services. And the reason we're doing it specifically with our managed WordPress plans is because we just are so passionate about the benefits that those services provide for WordPress websites. And they are just amazing services. And of course I am a little bit biased, but we truly aim to be your technical partner and work alongside you and really care about the success of your business and really treat it as if it was our own business. So we just know the benefits of those services are so substantial for WordPress sites, no matter what the size is of your site currently. So 99% off the first 2 months of our managed WordPress plans. That applies both month to month or annual, whichever you'd prefer. And the code for that is just IEA 2023, so 2023.
Yes. And we're going to make sure that that's linked in the show notes, that all information will be there so that they're able to grab it. I just appreciate you so much for taking the time to be able to speak with me and my audience. Before we go though, I kind of have one more question I have to ask.
Sure.
I think one of the scary things for me when I was switching from Blogger to WordPress.org was, holy crap, how do I do all this? What is the level of customer service that BigScoots has? Are you big on hand holding and being able to show them how to go about making the switch? And just what does that kind of look like?
The answer is yes. We really work alongside you to make the process as seamless and stress-free as it possibly can be. When you're moving over from a site builder like Squarespace or Blogger or Wix, for example, to WordPress, there are some additional steps that need to be taken to do so, which I won't get into too much, but it is something that we work alongside with you every single step of the way to make it nice and seamless for you. And actually, one way that we do it is that will enable your existing website to remain live on the internet in the meantime. So you won't have any interruption with your site's visitors or anything like that. So our team, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, which time zone you're in, our team is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day or someone's birthday, 3:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the afternoon. You will always quite literally get a response from our team within about 90 seconds. And that's one thing that we love about the business that we're in, is we get to really get to know our clients inside and out, get to know your websites inside and out. And hopefully you get to know us in the same way and know us by name as well. And we work alongside you to really help your business succeed.
Excellent. Katie, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you. And thank you to all the listeners popping in. Make sure that you go over and take advantage of that. And even if you just have questions, you heard them. They're available 24/7. Get your questions answered. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Jenny.
You have often heard me describe myself as a dinosaur when it comes to bloggers, having been online since 2009. So because of that, asking these questions, I really kind of felt silly. But web hosting is always this thing that seems so strange. I don't know exactly what it is. It's a tech thing. I don't want to know. Just hand it off and be done with it. But Katie's explanation today blew my mind. I clearly know what web hosting is now, and why I make sure that I have a VPS. So you are definitely going to want to make sure that you take advantage of the offer that they're offering, 99% off for the first 2 months of your WordPress hosting with BigScoots. And if you have any questions about what would be the right server for you, what should you be working with? Should you be doing shared? Should you be doing it solely as a VPS? Make sure that you set up a time to talk to them. When she says they're available 24/7, she is absolutely being truthful in that. And she's willing to answer questions whether you're with them now or not. So make sure that you take advantage. All right, you guys, until next time, I will see you all then.